Welcome back to part 3. Good for you for making it this far. I'm just going to do all of these lessons live, so bear with me if I make a mistake here and there. I want to show that even if you're used to the software, it's still really easy to make mistakes, and everyone does. So in the last video, we got a pretty good base going down. So I think let's start by making the glass. So let's hit Shift A, and we kind of got to find a shape that's going to be the most similar to what we want to build with. You kind of want to use this approach when building anything. So I think a cylinder is going to be the closest thing, so I'm going to hit that. And now this one is just way too big. So let's make the radius, I don't know, 5 centimeters. If you're in meters, it's going to be 0.05. And how tall is going to be, I think 20 centimeters. Yep, that looks about right. So I'm just going to hit G and Z and move it all the way up. While clicking on it, I'm going to hit Tab, and now we want to make more sections. So to do that, we hit Control R, and now we have a loop. You can move it up and down, but if you want to be it perfectly in the center, just hit right click and it's going to go straight to the center. Let's go into the vertice select mode, and there, we've got a perfectly good loop cut. Now, since our hourglass is going to be symmetrical, when things are symmetrical, there's no point in modeling two things or the same thing twice. So for instances like this, we can use a mirror modifier. So let's go into X-ray, Alt, left click, that's going to select all of them, and hit X, and then delete vertices. Now that we've removed the bottom half, we can go to where there's this little, I don't know, spanner or wrench, modify properties, hit there, click add modifiers. Here there are tons of modifiers, but for the time being, let's just use mirror. A good way to get used to them is just giving a go, trying them, see what they do. You can always just Google what they do or watch a video. So anyway, let's hit the mirror modifier, and nothing's happened. And that's because it's mirroring on the x-axis, but we want it to mirror on the z. Now it's mirroring, so now if we go back into edit mode, and I move something at the top here, it's going to perfectly move it at the bottom. This way, we only have to model the top of our hourglass. So let's hit Alt to select all of them, and then S to scale down. And yeah, that looks about fine. Honestly, you could use it like that and make it like, you know, one of those very geometric art pieces, but let's actually try and make it look like a classic hourglass. So let's go back in edit mode, hit Ctrl R to create another loop cut. And now if you scroll your mouse wheel, it'll create more loop cuts. So let's go ahead and create quite a few and place them. Now by just using the Alt click, let's just slowly scale these down into the shape we want. If you want to move more at once, you can go to the top here, and where here is proportional editing. When you select that and you now try to scale something, you'll see a little circle appears. If you can't see the circle, it means it's either too big or too small. So to make it bigger or smaller, you just scroll your wheel. So for example there, it was probably out of your field of view. Just scroll it in, and now anything within that circle is going to get edited at the same. This is really good when you want an even gradient when, you know, moving or scaling things down. Make sure to turn it off. There we go. I might add another loop cut here. Click G and then Z, just to scale it up to give it a bit more even. Now, the basic shape is looking good, but obviously glass isn't square. So one way to do this is to shade to smooth, and that did a pretty good job. But if you look at it from the side, you can still see, you know, it's quite a bit bumpy. So there's two ways of doing this. We can either go in and add a bunch more loop cuts, you know, just using more geometry to make it look smoother. Or once again, we can use a modifier. So if we click add modifier and we hit subdivision surface. And there we go. Now when we look at it from the side, it's way smoother, but it's not quite there yet. So if we just increase the levels from 1 to 2, there we go. You can always increase them more, but you know, it's all about how well you want to run and how strong your computer is. But for good rule, 2 to 3 is normally good. There's a little bit of a weird texture edit or texture error up here. but we can probably fix that by just adding another loop cut. So let's hit E to extrude this, and then S to scale it inwards, and then maybe G and Z up a bit, and there we go. You can still see it a bit, but only slightly. And there we go. That shape is looking quite good. But now if you zoom into it or go inside it, you'll notice that it's either paper thin, and that's not really going to work for us. So before we edit now, let's apply a modifier. So to apply a modifier, just hover over the modifier you want to apply, and then hit Ctrl A. That'll apply. If it's not applying, it's probably because you're still in edit mode, and Blender doesn't let you apply modifiers when you're in edit mode. So once you go out of edit mode, by just hitting tab, you should be able to apply your mirror modifier. Now it's one solid piece and it's not going to separate. So let's now try and get the thickness of the glass right. Because right now the glass is paper thin. And though that would be ideal, it wouldn't be very strong and it would be incredibly hard to manufacture. So let's add another, pardon me, let's add another modifier. We're going to use the solidify modifier. This adds thickness to a mesh. So we hit solidify, and so far it's done what we want, but it's a bit too thick and it's overlapping. So we just go to the thickness, and instead of 1 centimeter, let's make it 0.5 centimeter. That's quite good, but it's still rather thick. So let's try 0.2 centimeters. You might have to play with it a bit, but once we get that, that's pretty much the shape we want, and the thickness is looking good. Turn off X-ray mode. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that shape. Let's look at it from the side, hit X-ray mode. As you can see, it's kind of floating above our base. So if you hit G and then Z, and let's just try our best to match it up. Now it's fitting flush with the base and it's not clipping. If it's too big, we'd either have to scale it down a bit, or what we could always do is go into this one, Alt left click, and maybe just scale that to make more space for it. But luckily for us, it's fitting quite well. Next, instead of leaving it to hover in midair, let's add a floor to it. So Shift A, add a plane, and if you're lucky, it's going to be in the right position. If not, just view from the side, hit G and Z, and slowly move it up. And there we go. Pretty quick and simple, but you know, it was a very simple shape, and because it's symmetrical, we only had to do one thing. Ideally, we would want to add sand inside the hourglass, but then we would need to use simulation, and that is going to be way too advanced for a tutorial. So why don't we just add the default cube? Let's add the cube, make it a little bit smaller, G and Z. If you can't see it well, let's just go into X-ray mode, view it from the side, and now we can perfectly see it in our thing. Let's rotate it to give it quite a unique shape and angle, and there we go. If you hit Shift D to duplicate an object, it will copy it, and then we can just hit G and Z to move it up. Now we have an hourglass with 2 cubes hovering in it, and it's perfectly positioned our base. For the next video, we can look at adding textures and lighting and bringing the thing to life. Because it's very interesting to see everything grayed out. So that's going to be it for part 3. Thanks for watching. Once again, if you have any problems, please feel free to drop a comment down below, and I'll try my best to fix it.